kids pastor in Colorado, in the city of Aurora. It's a big city. It's actually the third largest city in Colorado, and I think that's last I heard it was the 10th largest suburb in the country. It's a sprawling area, so it represents an affluent area all the way down to inner city area. So it's a sprawling area. I live in Parker, which is nearby. I can't afford to live in the actual city of my church because it's a pretty nice area. But we do a lot of inner city ministry as well. But I've been here now I think I'm in my 6th year. I started as an interim. The pastor reached out to me. They were going to be letting their kids pastor go, and he knew I lived in the community and wanted me to step in as an interim. And so I said, yeah, I could do that. And then after I was there a couple of months, I was like, I like this church. So I said, actually, can I apply for the job? And he gave me grief for the longest time because he actually, at first he said, do you want the job? And I said, no, I'm full-time with Kidology. And so when I said I'd like to apply, he got mad because not mad in a really mad, but just he had just started the national search and had paid all the companies that you hire, and he said, now I have to go through the process. You have to apply like everybody else, but I ended up getting the job, so I love it. We have a new pastor now. He's a young guy, youngest boss I've ever had, but he's fantastic. He's humble, he's teachable, but he's got that youthful energy that's good to have. He's only 33 years old. But he leans on me and values my wisdom and experience. And so we make a great team. So I enjoy being in the trenches. I took a break from being a pastor when I became a dad, and being out of church ministry was a great experience for me because for the first time in my life, I was a church shopper, and it kind of changed my attitude on a lot of things because you kind of judge the church shoppers and the people who go on vacation and don't come back to church on Sunday, those lazy bums, and so when you didn't have to be at church, I've always joked about writing a book on the other side of ministry. So my perspective even on volunteers and how we treat them, how we view them changed because for 9 years I was a volunteer. And just even how I was received, how I was treated, how I was welcomed, and often when I would visit a church, I didn't say I was a former children's pastor, or even that I had a kids ministry website. I was just a dad. I was in a season of healing as well, so I didn't want to flag all that. In fact, one of my highest trafficked blog posts on my blog, the title is "You Don't Have a Recruiting Problem, You Have a Relationship Problem." Because one of the things I learned was that, with all my calling and passion and skills, what I really wanted was friends. And it was a big insight for me because one of the churches I went to, I jumped in, but I wasn't greeted. I wasn't thanked. It was like I was invisible. And they had no idea how much I had to offer the kids ministry. And then I got invited to be an usher, which I used to view as one of the lowest positions, not in a bad way, but just you don't need to have a lot of skill to be an usher. Now, some ushers might argue with that, but I signed up for a free t-shirt. They had these really cool t-shirts. It was a series on the mighty men of David. And so it was like the Incredibles with an M. And I just wanted the t-shirt. But these guys, man, they invited me out. They became my friends. I ended up being an usher for 3 years. And because I got community, and I actually quit the kids ministry and became an usher for quite a while. And I realized, man, people want friends. Yeah. They may have skills and a lot to offer you, but if you don't make friends, you're going to lose them. And so now my whole recruiting approach is less about what gifts and skills and passions they have, and how do I become friends with these people, because then they will give me everything, but anyway.
And that's actually a great point there, because when we're talking about volunteer recruitment, a lot of times we do all the recruiting, right, Karl? We're the ones out there looking for the people, My approach, because I agree with everything you're saying, it's all about community. Relationships are key in ministry, and particularly to draw people into works of ministry. They want to know how they're going to fit, and particularly how they're going to work within a team. So my best recruiters were my staff people.
Yeah.
You know, they were the ones that I said, listen, we need some help in fourth grade. Who do you guys know, and who's somebody that you're friends with that you think would be great working with the preteens? Let's bring them on. And
Yeah,
they
and
would.
I tell my team that. I say, when I recruit, people view it as me doing my job.
Yeah.
You're actually a better recruiter, because come work with me is more powerful than come work for me.
Right.
You know, and like, especially, and I use the example of, if I approach a mom who's got 3 kids and she's running a household, plus she's got a part-time job, and I try to recruit her, she's like, she'll be polite, but she'll be like, this man has no clue what my life is like. Like, she wouldn't say this, but she might be thinking, like, how dare this guy expect me to do more?
Yeah.
But if another mom comes to her who also has kids and a job and a household and's involved with school and community, and another mom like her comes and says, man, you got to be a part of our kids ministry. It is so fun. It fills my tank. You know, I've got, you know, I feel like I'm contributing to the church. That mom can recruit that mom so much easier than I could recruit that mom. You know, so it's so powerful. So, but
Well,
anyway, I'll shift gears to what Kidology is.
yeah.
I know you're talking and focusing on the history of KidMin. I'm a bit of a dinosaur. I was playing on the internet when people didn't know what it was. Back in 1994, Google did not exist, YouTube did not exist, Yahoo did not exist. I'm still sore at Amazon because Amazon beat me by 1 month. Amazon started in November of 1994, and I hadn't heard of it, but I started Kidology in December of 1994. And George Bush gets teased for saying internets, but people don't know there were multiple internets. When I started Kidology, I had to build it on multiple internets, and they had funny names like Gopher, Veronica. AOL was a separate internet, and then there was the World Wide Web, and the www ended up becoming the internet, but it was actually a competitor with multiple internets back in the day. And I don't know if you even know this, Megan, but you used to have to pay for the internet by the hour. And so when unlimited internet came out, that was like, oh, like unlimited internet. It was like the emperor, unlimited power. Yeah. So Rick and I
still remember dial-up. Remember that dial-up stuff? You know, all the little noises.
Have you seen that Instagram, like the sound that sets generations apart? And young people don't know what that sound is. And then your brother or sister would pick up the phone and it would kill your internet connection because you were getting online through your phone line. But anyway, I started playing on this internet, and I was actually discipling a middle schooler who showed me the internet, and he was making web pages. And so I was like, I want to make a web page. So my first web page was a Star Wars web page. I see Star Wars behind you, and I've got Yoda behind me, and so I made a Star Wars web page and put sound bites and, you know, star background. And then I started learning you could network and connect people. So I'm embarrassed to say this, but my first website was called Kingdom Karl. And it sounds very egotistical, but it was, I had never met a Karl with a K in my life. And so when I started searching the World Wide Web, I would meet other Karls with a K. So I started a website to network Karls with a K, and I ended up meeting 8 other Karls. So there were 9 Karls with a K around the world. Most were in Germany. And so we just started talking to each other. And it was kind of cool. So we had our profiles up there and what we did for a living, and we just enjoyed chatting, you know. And then Christmas break 1994, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I know it was of God. God kind of said to me, you know, who cares about Karls with a K other than you and 8 other guys? I had recently read a book called The Intentional Minister, and God had led me as a college kid, same age as you, to take a retreat and form a life mission statement. So I had dropped out of school for a week. I rented a cabin at a camp in Michigan, and I had crafted a life mission statement for myself. And it was to reach and teach as many kids as possible with the good news of God's love, and in the process to enlist, equip, and encourage others to do the same. So I had this life mission, and to reach and teach kids, obviously, that was the children's evangelist part of my life. There were no kids pastors, they didn't exist. And my dad was a pastor. I didn't want to be a lead pastor. So I kind of thought I was going to be a children's evangelist, like a couple of friends of mine. But the second half that God gave me, a list, equip, and encourage others to do the same, I knew that was of God because I didn't know how I was going to do that. So I was praying about, well, how do I enlist, equip, and encourage others to also be children's evangelists? And kids pastors didn't exist. The Kids Pastors Conference did exist in its infancy, but I had not heard of it yet. And
it was really just
and
at
so I
that
was
time.
praying about
At that time, it was just a collection of, like in Denver, wasn't it? Just a few people.
Couple of friends
Children.
of mine who are now friends.
Yeah.
They were Dick Gruber, Barney Kennard, a couple of guys were meeting in Denver, Dale Von Sagan. But I didn't know, I knew Barney, but I didn't know about that gathering yet. And so so every day I was praying, God, how can I enlist, equip, and encourage others to go into kids ministry and become kids evangelists? And so I'm working on my Kingdom Karl, and God says, forget Kingdom Karl. How about Kingdom KidMin? Well, KidMin didn't exist, but Kingdom, I was actually part of the conversation to come up with KidMin. My vote was CMmin, and I lost to KidMin, but KidMin turned out to be better. But anyway, that's more history. But so I started a website for children's ministry. And back then it was not Kidology, it was AOL.com/Kidology. And so I started a website, and I started a newsletter, and was hosted on AOL. And I started an object lesson zone. People could email me a name of an object. I would write an object lesson. I started a forum, had to custom code a forum. Forums were similar to Facebook, but Facebook didn't exist.
Oh.
And so it grew to like 20,000 children's directors, teachers, Sunday school teachers. I was so sad when I finally shut down the forum when everybody was on Facebook. That was a sad day. Michael Chanley set up CM Connect. You were probably on that. Then the combination of CM Connect and Facebook was when I shut down my forums. And but yeah, it was really exciting. So I started Kidology in 1994. I actually have a book, which if you send me an address, I'll mail you a book I wrote called Bright Idea. I'm seeing if I have one laying around here. I finally wrote a book on our 25th anniversary. That's the story of Kidology and all the different things that God did over the years as I just pursued that. And God just blessed it. I mean, he brought a businessman into my life that was a really neat story of how God brought him into my life. And he came to our church, and God told him to volunteer in the kids ministry. So he came to me and said, Karl, I know nothing about kids. I don't even know why I'm talking to you, but God told me to volunteer in the kids ministry. All I know how to do is fold up chairs. So I said, well, then you'll be my chair folder. So we started folding up chairs every week. He'd fold up chairs, and then we'd go to lunch. This guy was the IT director for Saddleback Church and what's the other big church? Saddleback and Willow Creek in their infancy. And so, because he flew between Chicago and Orange County, he worked for Hewlett Packard, and he liked church plants. So he was like part of both those churches when they were baby churches. So he knew technology. So he was intrigued with this website I was starting. And so he started asking me questions about it. And I started telling him, what my vision was. And I used to have this line when I was young, and I would say, I believe in dreaming big, and it's better to dream too big and have God cut it down to size than to dream too small and frustrate God. And people used to say, like, I thought that was a great line, right? I was like, I'm a man of vision. And people would go, oh, that's good. That's good. Steve was the first guy to look me in the eye and say, well, I don't think you're a man of vision. I was like, what? And he goes, we've been meeting for 6 weeks and all I hear about is obstacles and problems. And he says, you're doing this all yourself. He says, show me your business plan and I'll believe you're a man of vision. And I was like, what's a business plan? Like, I didn't know what a business plan was. So turns out this guy's like friends with Bill Gates and he knows business. So he says, I'll give you a template. So he gives me this blank document and walked me through forming a business plan, which was like, what would Kidology look like if it was actually a company? And so we spent 3 months, budget, employees, building budget, this huge budget, and employee job descriptions. Like, it was crazy. We get all done with it, and he says to me, and he's not a wealthy man, he's just an employee of Hewlett Packard. We get all done with it, and I said, "What's next?" He goes, "Well, unfortunately, I hate to tell you this, we're at the end of what I can do." And he said, "The next step is funding." And he said, "If I was a rich guy, I'd write you a check." And he said, "Now we just need to pray that God will fund it." And so he told me later, he went home that night and he felt bad. He felt guilty. And he actually prayed and he said, "God, I think I've done a bad thing." He said, "I've taken Karl on this journey and I can't take him any further. Maybe I shouldn't have done this. Like, maybe I got his hopes all up and there's nothing I can do." The next week, a guy comes into my office at my church and he has this vision for a Bible family camp thing, wants to know if I like my job and would I want to quit my job and go start some family camp thing. And I said, "That sounds awesome." But I said, "I have a life mission statement." I told him what I told you earlier. And I said, "So I love what I do. I love where I am." And he goes, "Oh, I respect that." He goes, "If you ever have a vision, I'll fund it." I'm like, that's weird. So he leaves. And so I was like, well, I have a business plan. Is that what he means? So I made an appointment. I went to his office and I said, I kind of lied because I said, "You said if I have a vision, you would fund it." What he actually said was, "If you have a vision, I will fund it." But he said, I kind of softened it. "You said you might fund it." So I showed him the business plan. He flips through it. He goes to the executive summary page, which Steve had told me an investor will only read the last page. You have to do all the other pages, but all they look at is executive summary.
Right.
And he pulls out his checkbook. I just have a check lane here. And he writes a check for $50,000.
Wow.
And he says, "Who do I make it out to? Kidology?" I was like, "Well, that's just a name I made up. It's not a company or anything." I said, "Did you make it out to me?" And he puts the checkbook down and goes, "Oh, I can't do that." So I'm like, "Oh no." So he calls his secretary in. He says, "Call Case Hoogendorn." That's my lawyer to this day. He says, "Call Case, tell him to set up a nonprofit organization." What's it called again? Kitty what? I'm like, Kidology. Yeah, set up a nonprofit, tell Case to set it all up. I'll pay for it all. And then make the check out to Kidology. So I walk out of there with a $50,000 check made out to Kidology, which doesn't even exist. So I drive over to Steve's house. I ring the doorbell. Steve comes to the door, and all I did was like hold this check up. He sees Kidology, $50,000, and this grown man just starts crying. And he goes, "Where'd you get that?" So I tell him the story. And well, I came in the house, obviously. We sat down. He says, "Karl, last night I was crying before the Lord and telling him that I thought maybe I did the wrong thing." He says, "I told God, minimum, we need $50,000 to even attempt this." And he says, "And you show up well, it actually took 4 or 5 days, but he said, last night I was praying, minimum, we need $50,000. And you walk up to my door with a $50,000 check." So now I thought I hit the lottery. I mean, I was so naive. I did not know that $50,000 is nothing. I mean, when you're talking about a ministry and funding, but I got my first ad in Children's Ministry Magazine. I spent like $3,000 on that. I exhibited at the Children's Pastors Conference, which I had finally learned about, and they just started out getting bigger, by then. And then, no, they weren't just starting out. The time has gone by. So, they were in San Diego. And then I hired a programmer to make the site where I wasn't entering every single membership. So people were able to actually join and pay with a credit card. That was like $25,000. But, took away a lot of manual labor. So we grew up, you know, and so he helped us out a few more times. But his philosophy was he didn't want us dependent on him. So he said, I'm going to help you out this much, and then I'm going to cut it off because you need to become self-sufficient. But we've been rocking and rolling ever since. We've had some hard times. You can read about it later if you want in the book. The next thing I got was a race car donated, and that's how I got my first employee. Was a guy was convicted by a story I told of a little boy who gave his all and donated Matchbox cars at church. And he emptied his garage and donated all his cars, and he donated one to Kidology. And I sold that race car for $40,000 and I hired my first employee, and I said, well, I have your salary in the bank 1 year. So I'm hiring you for 1 year. And if you do your job and we grow, then I can keep you. If we run out of money in 1 year, and that gal did a good job, and she ended up getting married and left, but we've always been able to keep one employee. But yeah, it was just trusting God for the next thing, And but no, it's we're not, we've been bigger than we are now, because now there's a lot of children's ministry websites. Ryan Frank used to be on my team. Then he started Kids Matter. So there was a season we were much bigger. We were the only children's ministry website. Now there's so much out there, but I don't drop names because I don't want to feel like I'm taking credit for anybody else, because everyone has their own journey with God. But many of the kids ministry websites and ministries out there, we helped, and my philosophy was always raise the water level. Don't build Kidology, build the kingdom. And you'd probably be surprised if I told you how many ministries out there, they used to be a part of Kidology. And when we were in our heyday and we were a $500,000 ministry every year, I was building my competitors' websites. I'd go to small websites and go, man, we'll build your website for you. I built INCM's website years ago and remodeled their whole website, got them up and going. And, because we were at a place where we were able to do that, and so it's just been fun to contribute.
Let's explore this a little bit. Obviously, a week or so ago, and for those of you just tuning in, if you're catching this online or in some other format here, this interview with Karl is part of a class that I teach, a graduate class on children's and family ministry for Hope International University. And we've got Megan here today. She came in, and it's kind of funny. We have I think 6 students in our class. Megan has shown up today. This is the first class, or the first Zoom of the class. Usually builds from there. So Karl, I'm glad you could kick us off with this conversation. And Megan, it's good to have you here. In fact, in a moment, I'm going to have you turn on your mic and have you ask a question if you'd like of Karl. But before we get to Megan, I am curious, because as we looked last week at the history of children's ministry, there have been some phases, and let's go with modern children's ministry. And I'm really speaking since the 1990s, because when you think about it, children's ministry on a professional level really didn't emerge until the 1990s, as you indicated. That's when you began to surface or service professional children's ministries, and we had the explosion of the mega church in the 80s and 90s, and I always say that children's ministry is about 10 years behind youth ministry. So if you look at what's on the cutting edge of youth ministry, that's where children's ministry is going to be 10 years later. And you've seen that all the way through. You look at worship. Worship was huge in the 90s for youth ministries. Well, in the 2000s, that really became a big thing for children. It just kind of bleeds down from there. It's been an observation of mine. But I'm kind of curious, Karl, because you and I, we go way back. What have been some of the chapters, you might say, for children's ministry? And maybe a better way of putting this is, what are some of the changes? What's different between 1990 children's ministry and 2015 children's ministry? And of course, now post COVID, things have really messed up and are different. But
Yeah.
what are some things you've seen?
Well, it's been a fascinating transition. My dad was part of the resurgence of youth ministry, the growth of youth ministry. One of the first youth pastors in the 70s and 80s, and then children's pastors. I grew up with a CE director,
All right.
and when I became a children's pastor, um, a church hired me or wanted to hire me to be the coordinator of children's ministry. I didn't, but I thought I invented children's pastor. I'd never heard of a children's pastor because the church that hired me, they actually let go their CE director because he was overseeing everything and they wanted to move to specialized ministry. So they hired a youth pastor and they hired an adult education pastor and they hired a seniors pastor. And then I was teaching children's church. I was a Moody Bible Institute student, and they're like, hey, there's this guy doing kids church. Maybe we hire him to do the kids. And I just graduated, and so they offered me coordinator of children's ministry, and I was scared to death to push back because I wanted the job. And I said, you've got a pastor for everybody, even a pastor for worship, which isn't even a people group per se. Can I please be the pastor for the kids? And I joked to one church hiring me that I probably could have asked to be the emperor of children's ministry. They probably would have said, whatever title you want. I don't think they cared about the title as much as I did, but I wanted to be the pastor of the kids, not the coordinator or the director. And they agreed. And so I was like, yeah, I'm the kid. Then I found out there was a kids pastors conference and there were others doing that. And I understand because some of those watching are going to say, well, I'm not allowed to be the pastor because I'm a woman and they're directors or coordinators. I understand that. And I'm sympathetic to that. So for those of you who hear that and you're like, yeah, I just want you to know you are a pastor. You are a shepherd. Don't get hung up on the title. If you're not allowed to be a pastor because you're a woman, please hear me. You are a pastor. Pastor is a role, not a title. You are a shepherd. So don't get hung up on what's on your business card or on your door. God knows you are the shepherd of those kids. Pastor is nowhere in the Bible. It's shepherd. So I just want to say that for those who long to be the pastor and for theological or just denominational reasons they can't be a pastor. You are a pastor to those kids. God knows it. The kids know it. The parents know it. And just rest assured and don't be discouraged if you lack a title that you want to have. Live it out, and your fruit will show that you are a pastor. I just wanted to throw that out there. But I think it's wonderful.
And that's probably
That
one of the changes, isn't it?
it is a
Because
big
I
change.
think since the 90s, there's been a huge shift where women are much more involved. And obviously, children's ministry is, if you go to a children's ministry event, it's
Oh yeah,
70, 80% women.
yeah.
So,
You and I are the minority.
right, right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to have more men, so that boys see that following God is not a girl's gig. We need more role
Mhm.
models of men in ministry. So I think that's powerful. It also helps get more men volunteers when the boys, or even the men see male leadership. So we need to have both. Just as it was in school, it was cool to have some men
Yeah.
teachers, in your high school or middle school. But that said, that's been shifting. But one of the things that also has been changing is the decline of Sunday school. And churches traditionally had a Sunday school hour, and then they had a children's church hour. And part of that shift, I don't like the word blame because blame is a negative connotation, but one of the reasons I attribute to the decline of Sunday school, I really believe has more to do with the rise of small group ministry. Because as church, well, two things: small group ministry and the church plant ministry. And the reason I say it's not blame is that those are both really good things. But in a traditional church model, you had Sunday school and then you had adult service, and so kids got a lot of their education in Sunday school, age graded education, grade class, second grade class, third grade class, and then they all came together for a corporate worship. And so kids church really wasn't viewed as education as much as it was viewed as a worship, a story, that you weren't doing scripture memory as much, and you weren't laying that foundation because they got that in Sunday school. Similar to adult ministry, you had ABFs and you had adult Bible fellowship, and you had, so there was very parallel. But as the small group ministry grew, which is important because it's important for fellowship, I gotta ignore my phone call. It's important for community. There's so many good reasons for small group, but I think there was a misunderstanding in the small group ministry growth that was replacing education. So as small groups grew, churches stopped doing education on Sunday mornings because they're like, well, we have small groups. We don't need Bible, we don't need Sunday school, adult Sunday school classes. And so, whereas I would argue to no audience that small groups are not the best place for adult education because you don't have the control of education. You don't have the teacher training filters, but anyway, that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But the result of that is that adult education has gone away from Sunday morning. And so now you have just 2 adult services. And when you have 2 adult services, now that affects kids ministry because you want to have a parallel experience on Sunday morning because now families are only coming to church for 1 hour.
Yeah.
So you don't want to have kids having Sunday school or church because they're either going to come to Sunday school, which is more boring, less education, boring in a good way, it's education, or they're going to just have kids church. So like even the church I'm at used to have Sunday school and kids church, but the parents are only coming once. So the kids are going to want to come second service, which is more upbeat, more fun or whatever. And so when I came, my pastor was like, I really want the experience to be the same both hours. So we lost that Sunday school. So we have to focus on education now in other ways. The other thing is the church plant movement, because that has impacted, literally changed the buildings in America. When we used to host a Kidology University conference at our church, when I went full time with Kidology for years, when I became a dad and I took a break from being a children's pastor, I could not find churches with educational space. You look at every new church that's built, it's built with a huge auditorium for adults, a few small rooms for children's ministry, large group classrooms. They don't have educational rooms because they don't build for adult Sunday school anymore. So I couldn't even find churches I could host a conference at because they don't build education space. And so you're trying to find, where can I have a conference where I can have breakouts? They don't exist because it's all built on large group from kids to adults. It's all large group.
Yeah.
And I think
I'm thinking about the church where I attend right now. It's a church plan of about 10 years. We've got the big auditorium and we've got one room that maybe will hold 30 adults, but it's also where they have the kitchen, all the refrigerator, everything's in that room.
Yeah. So now that's how you go to any church that's less than 10, even 20 years old, they don't have classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that's because when they were a church plant, they met in a school, they met in a civic center, they met where they had church and then just enough childcare. I know I said childcare, that's evil, but they had children's ministry, but they didn't have educational space. And then they build what matched the ministry.
Right.
They didn't change their ministry model, because they now were going to have a building. They didn't think, well, man, now we can build and we can have an education ministry. They just built for the ministry that they currently had. And to me, that was short-sighted, but I don't blame them because they just built what they needed.
Yeah.
And they didn't think we could now we can have 20 classrooms and we can have Christian education, also said it's not a blame issue, it's a reality issue, or
Right.
they're factors, because
Right.
those are good factors. But kids ministry always gets the impact of the trends in adult ministry and their unintentional consequences of the explosion of small groups, the explosion of church plant, and then kids get the facilities that we inherit, and then we have to modify ministry with the facilities we're given. and the resources we're given, and then make the best of it. So I think those are some of the challenges that we're facing.
Yeah. Well, let's bring Megan in here. She's been very patient here listening, and we've been talking. In fact, we just talking Christian education. Our topic this week, Megan, has been Christian education, storytelling, and how to tell the Bible or communicate the Bible in more creative ways. But this is your class. We're a class of one today, although I think I'm going to say that I'm a student as well. So we're a class of two here. Carl, you're the prof. But you got a question you want to ask?
Always
want to ask?
I was very intriguing to me because I honestly didn't know there was a difference between like actual Sunday school and then like church on Sunday. Because at least in my ministry context, there has never been that difference. It's always Sunday school is the kids' church on Sunday, and that's what it is. So like, how do you feel like we implement that back into churches, that more educational side, but still keeping it fun for kids? Because you want them to come back, but we also want them to learn and grow in their faith and give them those tools. So like, how do you balance those two
a healthy
things?
thing that has come out of the demise of Sunday school has been a return to an emphasis on parents being the primary spiritual leaders of their homes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we maybe lost a little bit when it was like, bring your kids to church, and we'll train them. So there has been a healthy sense of, hey, we need to equip parents. We need to train parents because we only get an hour on Sunday. We can't make disciples of your kids. And so that's been good. There's a lot of curriculum out there. In fact, I think every curriculum, some get more credit than others. I think every curriculum tries to provide resources and things. You're a big Orange fan, so Orange is, I say, the one that probably gets the most credit. But a lot of curriculums try to provide some kind of resource at home. We provide a table talker every month for intentional conversations, at the home, at the meals. I have a website I created during COVID called pastorkarl.com, because when we went totally shut down, but I've kept it going where now the kids get a QR code on a take home. And then if you go to pastorkarl.com/Sunday, every week I just update the URL so the parents can watch the video, discussion, questions, engage with the lesson. Kids can relive fun stuff. This time we're doing a series called Miraculous. It's all the miracles of Jesus, and they can learn a magic trick video from Mr. Magic, which is me. So I'm trying to engage them in the home. I'm actually doing a Discipleship Series on Monday nights right now. That's for kids and parents, so they come with their kids, and I'm basically stealth discipling parents on how to disciple their kids and taking them through a book that I wrote with my wife called Awesome Adventure that goes through the basics of the Christian life. So there's no one answer on how to do it, but we have to be intentional in figuring out other ways to do it. So not just sending something home, but creating a engaging way to encourage parents to do it, whether it's classes. I'm big on scripture memory. I think my newsletter that comes out yesterday on the value of scripture memory, or that's next Thursday, making scripture memory core to our teaching. So we're hiding God's word in their hearts, because God's word will not return void. Scripture memories kind of become passe, which I think is a big mistake. I think there's a direct correlation between scripture memory and people living for God. So I think that has to be an emphasis, and there's ways to make it fun. I talk about that in my newsletter next Thursday. Rick, what do you say?
First of all, I agree with a lot of that, of what you just talked about. I think it's interesting, at least up in my neck of the woods here in Boise, Idaho. I've been to a couple of the Children's Ministry Network meetings, and the big concern is with COVID. COVID has just really mucked things up as far as if you followed a presentation model, if that was your discipleship approach. One of my grad students basically referred to the mega church a couple years ago, this was pre-COVID, as a TED Talk and concert, or a concert and a TED Talk. And I think he's right on. I think a lot of children's ministries have adopted that over the years, to get, have kind of a very cool worship, with their kids church, if you will, and then a TED Talk type of communication style. But what COVID really upset the cart, changed things around, and we have to reimagine what it now looks like. And I think it's interesting. Of course, I observe and have worked with a number of different churches through this COVID moment, and I find it interesting that the latter LDS Church, the Mormon Church, by the way, they shut down as well. But all of they would have their Sunday meetings with the parents would lead their Sunday meetings at home. They had a curriculum, and they were already there. The Mormons already have a family home evening during the week, so they were ready. And they moved very easily into this COVID moment where they didn't have to go to a church in order to have their meetings. They could do it at home through the family. I think we stumbled a lot because we have followed a model that is attractional. We have to go someplace to a central location in order to be discipled, in order to hear the word of God, evangelize, the whole 9 yards. And those churches and those models of churches that were more decentralized have really found a new footing in this post-COVID culture. And, I'm still trying to figure out what that looks like for the evangelical church, of which, the strain that I tend to relate to the most. But what do you think on that? Let's talk post-COVID here for a moment. Where do you think the church is heading, and children's ministry?
It's been fascinating. I hate to say enjoyed that season, but I think so many churches learned technology that they were forced to learn. What's been fascinating to us is like we totally built like a studio. We upped our game with technology, and what's been amazing is we've reopened. We've now grown. We've caught up to where we were pre-COVID, but our online audience has not gone down. So we now have two audiences. We have an online community. We'll have people that move to Colorado and come to our church that will say, we've been a part of your church online. And when we moved here, we're like, we're gonna, they didn't move here because of our church, but they were already a part of our church before they moved here. And with our kids thing, we've continued that. It's been amazing. Like I right away started doing the kids church online. And at the beginning, I had thousands of views because I made it free. I didn't require the Kidology membership. So there were hundreds of churches immediately. I was producing whole services with my puppets, and I got permission to stream from a lot of the kids worship people. But I also started doing webinars on how to do green screen and how to do it. And it was funny because my views consistently went down, but it was a good thing because I was equipping people, because it's better for your kids to watch you than me because they know you. And some people would say, oh, I'm not as good at magic, or I'm not as good at, and I'd say it's better for them to watch you with less quality than me, with better quality, because they know you. And so it's gotten down to where, even though I put it out there for everybody, still my views, I can tell, are pretty much my church, but that's a fun trend to see people getting creative, getting into the home. But it was fascinating to see the cultural differences. When I did Zoom magic shows, I've lost track of how many Zoom magic shows I did during that season of shutdown. And I created a show that was very interactive. It was so fun. I was doing magic tricks that I was like throwing darts through the screen and doing things that were it really felt like the illusions. So they weren't just watching a magic show on YouTube. It was very interactive what was happening between me and the kids. But the cultures that were very much looked like me and were like my church, I would have anywhere from 30 to 50 kids. A lot of the other cultures that had me do Zoom magic shows, I did shows for hundreds. And a lot of them said it was because they already were utilizing Zoom. Chinese churches especially, I would have 300 to 500 kids on Zoom.
Wow.
It was insane. And those I'm still doing. In fact, I've done a few. I think this isn't too widely broadcast that I can say. I'm doing some covertly in China,
Hmm.
which is like I don't know how they do it with VPN or whatever, but I'm able to minister in underground Christian churches in China, and it's crazy, and that's all opened up because of COVID, so it's opened up ministry doors, but I think it's awakened the church that they need to be more accessible, more creative, and now it's a both and,
Right.
it's not
Right.
not just we're reopened, so we stop doing those things. We've got to do them both, you
Yeah.
know.
I've been looking at it, and when I think about the future of education, not just Christian education, but really public education, I look at it through three eyes. It has to be more immersive. We have to get people more into into the actual experience, and very much what you're just talking about with your magic. I think secondly, it needs to be more interactive, more conversational, and finally, I do think it's going to be more internet driven. We live in a world where the whole world can now come into one classroom, can come into one church, and it's a powerful opportunity that if we're not careful, we can get left behind. And
Yeah, but I do hope that people don't give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but all the more as we see the day approach.
well,
There was a
it,
debate on Facebook recently where they were all arguing about whether we need to meet in person and to be a Christian. And, you know, I just posted that verse from Hebrews. I said, well, I think God addressed this pretty clearly. And I just posted that verse. I think it's Hebrews, do not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but all the more as we see the day approaching, because that's the danger I see as people going, oh, well, we have the internet, we have Zoom, we don't need to get together in person, and it's really a
well,
both and,
let me kick back on that for a moment. Let's just play with that in our final few minutes together here, because I had a life group that met last night. We had let me see, 12 in the room. We had 12 in the room that attended personally, and then we had the 5 that came from Zoom. We had and our in our life group, we actually have a big screen television, and those
cool.
individuals are right up there on the screen, just like we are right now. And at the very beginning of the conversation or gathering, when we're all seated, I'd go around, we show everybody in the room, we're all waving to each other, and people know each other. We are very much connected. I would say that we met last night, even online, and argue that the people that come in and do community with us. We got a couple that comes in from Seattle. We got another lady who comes in from Montana. We have others that come in from all parts of Idaho. So 3 different states were represented last night in our gathering. And there's no way they could have gathered. There's no way they could have met, but they're coming together because they enjoy the Bible teaching. All right. So
Yeah.
they're getting that, but they enjoy the community. They enjoy the friendships.
Oh, I
Yep.
don't disagree with that. I'm
Yep.
just saying I don't think that we should ever reach a point where we don't meet together. I think it's a wonderful alternative that we have. I mean, I can't imagine the eras where people couldn't meet and they didn't have an option. I mean,
Right.
imagine COVID 30 years ago.
Right.
The isolation. You think of the suicides and the drug abuse and the depression that people faced even when we had this.
Right.
Imagine what this would have been like 20 years ago when people were in their homes and didn't have this, even the streaming entertainment, didn't even have the things that we had to cope. It probably would have been devastatingly worse.
Right.
I'm just saying I don't think a church should give up meeting together, if that's an option. Some of those folks that you met with that are remote, have they never met in person? Are these people that you've never met in person?
One of the gals, one of the gal from Montana, she is actually a former, we were same graduating class in high school. She came down for a special event, drove all the way from Montana down here to
Wow.
Idaho for a special event. So she has been here,
So she
but
saw the value in that
yeah,
in that
yeah, and she's
personal.
been with us. She reached out on Facebook to me and just said, "Hey, I know you lead a Bible study. I know you have a Zoom group that goes with that. I'd like to come join. And that's really where we get people. The people come in by Zoom, and but I have two of the couples last night that met with us. One has stage 4 cancer, and he cannot risk being in a group at this point.
Absolutely, yeah.
The other couple, they live on the other side of town. It's about a 40-minute drive to get here, and they have 2 young children. And, to have them here. So the option is, you say, and I agree with you, we should not give up meeting together. I think that's the principle. But I would argue that you can meet, if you do it right, have community online.
Yeah.
I think
I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
I'm saying that I would be ashamed if people who could meet opted for digital.
Right.
Well, that's why I say it's
and
a
I think
both
that
and.
goes without saying.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's why I'm saying
Right.
it needs to be a both and. And I think the fact that she would make that drive proves the value of being in person, even, and that was obviously extremely inconvenient, but she saw the value of, man, I want to be in person,
Right.
at least once, to honor those relationships. But like if a bunch of people who could easily get together opted, let's just do Zoom, I'd be like, you're missing out on what it could be.
Right.
But like our congregational meeting, I joked, we had our annual meeting this week on Wednesday night, and we're staying digital for our annual meeting. And I said that was the best thing to come out of COVID, because even for the voting, they used to have to collect all the slips and count them all, and then we'd fill time, and they have to give 50%, and they'd bring in new slips of paper. It would take literally over an hour just to elect the deacons. Everyone clicks on their screen, the computer says right away, everyone gave their presentations. The whole board, the whole annual meeting was less than an hour. No one had to go out, and it was like, the purpose of an annual meeting is not fellowship.
Right.
A lot of fellowship took place in the reports. Getting a quorum was a lot easier, and I don't think we violated don't give up meeting together.
Right. I guess my point with the last I being internet is exactly what you just made, is that in those, we in children's ministry, we have a lot of scenarios where it's just information only, right?
Yeah.
We're just communicating information. And do we have to do that by paper? Do we have to do that in person if we could do it digitally or through cyber communication?
Yeah.
To me, I think the generation born since 2000, I call them the iTechs, and the emerging robotics generation.
Oh, your book is fantastic, by the way.
What's that?
I'm plugging your book. Is fantastic.
Oh, well, thank you.
Hold it up,
Yeah, Gentech. There we go, right there.
Oh yeah.
But they are really more digitally driven, and part of the problem that we have, Karl, is that we're getting a little long in the tooth, and sometimes we still see things the way they were and think, I hear this a lot with COVID, when things get back to normal. And I've been basically saying things aren't going to get back to what it was. 2019 is not going to come back. If you're waiting for 2019, you're never going to see it again. Things have changed, and they've changed in a big way. And we have to learn how to operate within this new world.
Yeah.
And
well, it's why I run a Minecraft realm,
okay,
for the kids at my church. That's how I connect with the kids at my church.
I run fantasy sports leagues.
Yeah.
So, well, Megan, I'll tell you what, we're down to the last part of the hour here with Karl. And do you have another question you'd like to ask? We'll give you the last question and the last thought, but you've been very patient there.
Thank you. I do actually have one more question, kind of going back to the very first question I asked. You kind of mentioned parents, you want to get them involved. And ironically, I'm having a little bit of banter on our thread of discussion this week with one of my fellow students talking about that topic, because I feel like it's a bit tricky, because in the sense you do want to involve parents, you're like, here, teach your kid, because you are the primary pastor at home. But there's also the fact there's some parents that, don't want to do that. They don't want to be involved. Like, so how do we get those kids, as well as how do we not step on parents' toes in the sense, because my fellow student in the class had said, he's a parent. He says when people talk to him, he's like, well, I'm the parent you don't want to parent. I don't want you to parent my child, in the sense. So there is that stepping on toes there. So like, what's the nice middle ground to involve parents to make sure they are implementing the tools that we're giving them at home, so that, you know, the child also gets those tools? Like, what is that middle ground, if that question makes sense?
No,
Good
that's a
question.
great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a combination of information, of celebrating, challenging. When I get a chance to preach, you know, I will challenge parents, you know, preaching through Deuteronomy chapter 6. I have a thing that I do with the kids. It's called an all about me sheet, that the kids fill out, helps me get to know them. But one of the questions on there is things I wish my parents understood, things I'm worried about, whatever. I will compile those quarterly without the kid's name, and I send that home to the parents. Here's what your kids are praying about. Here's what kids wish their parents understood. So I give them glimpses into their to their kids' thoughts. So it's just kind of celebrating those. I do interviews with parents that I'll post when kids, you know, I'll try to get kids to talk about their parents and post like Instagram stories. And when a kid says, man, one of my favorite part of the day is when my parents pray with me at bedtime, you know, and I post that. That's going to make other parents go, oh, I could be praying with them at bedtime. So it's you do have to be gentle, because obviously you're young, you're not a parent. You can't put yourself in a position where you're telling them how to be a better parent, because it can have the opposite effect. You know, when I was a young guy and I was young married and I didn't have kids, I used to host twice a year a parenting forum at my church. And so what I did is I put round tables out, and then I invited in older people who had raised kids. And I told them they don't even have to have done a good job. I said, I just want parents whose kids are grown. They could think because no parent thinks they did a good job. I'm already feeling like the things with my 16-year-old, I wish I had done better, because he's making poor choices and stuff. And I'm like, what did I do wrong? You know, if you find a parent who thinks they did a good job, they're lying to you. All right. Because every parent struggles with guilt or regret or things they could have done better, because it's the hardest job on the planet. But you just find people who have raised kids and you say, would you just come and host a table? Because I'm going to invite young parents in, and then I put topics at each table. And then I, sorry about that. And then I hate these phones that like start talking. Thank you. And then every 10 minutes I have everybody rotate from table to table. I feel better because the other day I was listening to a podcast and the Alexa alarm kept going off, and I kept saying, Alexa, be quiet, Alexa, be quiet. And now I have to silence her. And finally, the guy in the podcast said, I'm sorry. And then he goes, Alexa, be quiet. And I was like, oh, it wasn't me. This was like a world famous podcaster. Even he had the interruption. But I had them rotate around tables, getting advice. So in other words, I was basically saying, I know nothing, but I'm gonna expose you to people who do. And so I basically you have to be just wise and savvy, be available. Even just I call families and ask, how can I pray for you this week? When you're a kids ministry leader, make a list of all the active families and call through them and ask for nothing. Because every time they see your name, they think you're asking, you're recruiting, you need something. I try to make sure I've called at least twice before I ask. And it's funny because the whole time you're talking to them, they're nervous. They're waiting for the ask. They think you're being friendly. And when you actually say, all right, well, thanks for your time. And thanks for sharing. I'll be praying for you this week. And you hang up, I guarantee they're hanging up going, that was weird, because she called just to ask how I was doing. They don't expect that. And then the next time you call, oh, this time she has an ask. I was just checking in, have notes, use Trello, use some kind of app. How's it going with that school teacher? How's your boy doing? And then they'll finally feel so guilty. Like, hey, do you need anything? Like, do you need help in the kids ministry? Actually, yeah, we've got a couple openings in nursery, and and like make them ask you, but anyway, won't get it back into recruiting. It's by invitation only. But but when you start to minister that way, then they'll start asking for help and resources. But it's like you almost have to flip it to where you're just a resource for them. And then they'll ask for help. And you say, you know what? I know a mom that's raised 4 kids. I connected 2 military moms this week. I can't help a military mom whose husband's out of town, but I got 3 military moms connected. Now they're having coffee once a week. That's better than anything I could tell them, you know. Rick, what do you say?
Well, that's a great point. And back on your calling of parents, in my day, I when I was doing children's ministry in the local church, it was back in the 80s. So keep that in mind. But for me, I actually visited every family in my church.
Yeah.
I personally made an appointment on an evening, and I'd do 2 or 3 in an evening, and I would just meet with them and take an hour of their time and just sit in their living room and get to know them. But I also would ask them, how are things going? What are some things that our program could do to better service you? What can we do to help you? And I just found that those getting inside the door and being a part of the family in their living room was very helpful. Also, if I had the chance, that's when I asked the kids, hey, can I see your room?
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you, if you want to find out what the gods are of your kids, just see their room. What are the things that they idolize? It's in their room. And today we use Facebook and social media for a lot of that stuff as well. But really, in a kid's bedroom has a gold mine of information for you. And sometimes I just sit in the room and or maybe we'd play a video game or something like that, just to get to know them. Yeah.
I miss those days.
That's really when ministry was more personal. And I think that's kind of what's happened is that in the last 25 years, we have become more impersonal in how we programs have become our thing. Whereas it used to be more about the people, we programmed in order to reach people and such, and our kids, but now we kind of do the same thing. It's become more impersonal. And
one of the ways I do it, because I'm a magician, is I offer free magic shows to any kid in my ministry, Okay. And the truth is I don't even do paid magic shows outside of the ministry anymore. I don't have time. So the only magic shows I do are for kids in my ministry. But they feel like, ooh, I'm getting a free magic show. It's like, well, all my magic shows are free. Wait a
minute. Maybe before we leave, we should have you do a magic trick for us. Megan, would you like to see a magic trick? Can you make us all disappear?
Well, I gotta see if I have anything nearby.
I was really into magic as a kid. It was like a big deal to me.
They love it. I'm trying to see if I even have anything nearby.
I got a magic trick while you're looking. Megan, this whole thing, magic is about the hands being quicker than the eyes, maybe if you're aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
So this trick is to show you that the hands are actually quicker than the eye. All right. So you got to watch very carefully. Watch my hands. And I'll tell you what, I'll take off my eyeballs here too. All right. You ready? Here we go.
Yeah.
Hands are quicker than eyes.
My magic stuff's all at the church. We're doing this magic series. I do have my Rubik's Cube, and I'll show you how to solve a Rubik's Cube. I'm memorizing the pattern. Let's see, do I got it? All right, so I'm hopefully I don't mess this up. If I mess it up, you can't post this video.
We'll crop out the end.
We'll crop out the end. All right, I'm gonna try eyes closed, one hand. Let's see here. Did I get it?
Holy cow. Look at that. Look at that.
Wow, I'm really impressed.
Was I off
I'm
screen?
Totally impressed.
Wow, that was cool.
Yeah, I can't do it with this one. This one takes me a little longer. I've got the white, the blue, and the red solved. So I'll get the other centers, then I'll do the edges. But if you go to kidology.org/Rubik's, I have countdown timers with all my cubes leading up to this one.
Wow.
That you can use in kids' church. The kids love my Rubik's countdown timers. I speed it up. This one, my arms were turning to rubber. I'd never solved it in one sitting, but I sat like this with a camera right here, and I solved it, filming. Took an an hour and 45 minutes. My arms were turning
Oh
to
my
jello.
gosh.
I didn't know if it would take me 2 hours, 3 hours, because I usually do one little part and put it down. This thing weighs a lot, probably 2 pounds or something, but to hold it in front of a camera, oh, I thought I
That's
was
why
gonna
you're so
die. I
buff.
realized later, because I sped it up, I probably could have taken a break and just put it back up, but I didn't, because I made it a 10-minute countdown video because otherwise it would just been too blurry.
Right. Right.
But
Well,
yeah,
Karl,
fun.
thank you. Thank you for joining us today. And
Sure.
Yes, thank
Megan,
you.
this has been kind of fun, hasn't it? You know, we've
It
learned a
was. I
lot.
liked it.
Yeah, it's been good. Next week we've got who is coming in next week? I have to think for a moment. Well, I'll tell you what, I won't make that announcement yet today. All right. But Karl,
Make it a
thank you
surprise.
for being a part of our kickoff of our Zoom class with children's and ministry and family ministry. Thank you very much. And is there any last thing you would like to say as far as reaching out to you, if there's a way to contact you, if people want to know more information?
Yeah, I just encourage you to go to kidology.org. Check it out. It's a great investment in your ministry. It's $300 a year or $100 a quarter, but we're a nonprofit ministry. So for students, small churches, if you just click on the scholarship link on the join page, you can get a scholarship. We don't let the money keep anybody out that needs the resources. They can literally just donate whatever they can afford, because we know small churches, especially students, can't always afford that. Our curriculum is free to members. So most curriculums are $1,000 or more a year. So it's a fantastic deal. Plus there's training videos, there's recruiting tools. It's been growing since 1994. There's just a wealth of resources and help there, tools. So definitely check it out. Join our Facebook group. It's called Let's Talk KidMin. It's the Kidology Facebook group. Love to have you there as well. And then I have a podcast, kidmintalk.com.
Great. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. And Megan actually is part of a small church herself. She leads and she's an intern basically now.
Mhm.
Yeah, interning
Yeah.
at a smaller church there in the Southern California area. But
Yeah,
anyway,
just sign up for the starter membership and then just fill out the scholarship link and say I was on the show with you with Rick, and we'll set you up for free.
I definitely will. I'll talk to my children's pastor I work under
yeah.
Cool.
and
There
see
you
if
go.
that's something she would love. Yeah.
And we're going to
Fantastic.
post this also at the HIU website as far as the course website, so that those who couldn't come today could actually see this as well. Thank you again,
Fantastic.
Karl. And you guys have a great weekend, and we'll
Yes,
see
thank
you
you.
next Friday.
Sounds great. Bye.
Bye-bye.